Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is the founder of Team Gloff. He's also an athlete for Team Raw and Revive. And finally, he's also the co-host of the Going Deep podcast. Today's guest is Nick Gloff. Nick, welcome back to the podcast, man.
What's up, dude?
Not a whole lot, dude. Just excited to kind of get you on for round two. We kind of had the normal, typical BTM podcast, kind of got your backstory, your history a little bit. There's been a lot that's kind of unfolded, I think, just this year. I think we've chopped it up maybe about a year ago. So I'm kind of just excited to catch up with you, man. I want to talk a little bit about you and Matt Berzicott's podcast. You guys just released episode 1 this past week. I listened to the majority of that, so I kind of want to just pull a few things out from that podcast. So what I kind of want to start with, though, Nick, why don't you, and you brought this up on your guys' podcast, but I just kind of want you to give us a cliff notes of, you were in prep this year. Talk a little bit about why you decided not to finish this year's prep, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I've had 3 runs successive at prep. The first 2 of them, I ended up not being able to do for health reasons. And I did talk at a fair length on that podcast. So like the bigger details and everything, I talked for like a full hour on it on my podcast, the Going Deep podcast. For anybody that wants to hear the full details, I'll refer you over there. But Cliff Notes version, I had the first 2 preps that I had to pull out of because of health reasons. So long story short of the origins of those health problems, back in college, I pushed myself way too far. So I put way too much stuff on my plate on purpose because I'm a masochist in that way. And I wanted to get everything I possibly could out of the years that I was in school. And so I had to pay my way through. So I had a night job. I had a relationship. I had 2 dogs to take care of. I had a double major with exercise science and kinesiology at one of the best exercise science schools in the country. I worked in a biomechanics lab, helped to organize the work for rate of force development research that we were doing there that was ongoing for years. What else? I mean, I was a mentor for a handful of guys that lived with me as a coach, but really more as a mentoring role. I was coaching also at the time, just getting my feet wet and getting started. And I was also, while I was in school, I was really working hard to maintain my like top of the class status with what I was doing with my grades. And through that as well, I was a bit of a tutor at the same time for a lot of the people that were around me that knew that I was that guy. And so I had a lot of hats I was wearing. Plus I was training the whole time, and my training never lost any precedence for me. That was always something that I held very, very highly in my daily structure. And so it was my time of solace, my solitude. It was great. But with all of that considered, I pushed myself way too far to the point that I had to have, 3 to 5 tops hours of sleep a night while I was under that kind of stress and like overstimmed all the time just to survive with all the rest of the stressors. I ended up getting pushed by nearing the end of my college years. I got pushed a little bit too far. And in one stint of time that was leading up into finals week, I ended up having to admit myself into the hospital because everything from my hips to my feet were changing color to purple and inflating with water retention that got so bad that from my upper legs, my thighs down to my knee and then below was all one uniform width. It's like, which is not good. Not good. So, and I had to admit myself, and I was told that I was in acute kidney failure. Yep, because of all of the stressors that I had put myself under consistently training still, being on high stims, and then never sleeping. And that kind of sleep, that 3 to 5 hours of sleep max that I would get, was consistent for pretty much 5 years up to that point. And so with what I was doing, and if anybody wanted to see what I was doing, you can even go back onto my Instagram and scroll far enough to see what I was doing on the gym floor back then. So it wasn't anything that you could just easily recover from, even with a normal athlete schedule where you're actually getting 8 to 9, 10 hours of sleep a night. I was doing it with 3 to 5. And for a lot of times I'd had to pull a lot of all-nighters just to keep everything running. And that caught up to me. So what I found out later was that I wasn't in actual kidney failure. It was just the numbers that I was exhibiting on my blood work and urinalysis were just showing that I was not keeping up with the damage, and the damage was quite high. So once I got everything cleared out, I was fine. But ever since that point, when I get to a certain level of stressors overall for my body and my every single source, it gets to a certain threshold, and then it goes into the same path, and it just slopes down for me. So water retention starts coming on really heavily, and it's not just a couple pounds, like 3 to 5, 10 tops. It'll go from none to 10 within a couple of days, then from 10 to 20 within another couple of days, and then it'll go up to almost 30 and stay. And that's what happened with the first 2 preps of mine. The first one was an experiment with other PEDs that I had never used before as well, which did not help the situation. And that only made things that much harder to manage and then figure out what the exact source of the problems were. And then the second one was a little bit less of that type of an issue, but it was still a similar circumstance where I was doing way too much all at once. And I didn't have things nailed down to the degree that I could handle the rest of my other life things while I was going through prep, so that those stress levels with all the activity and the low food and the consistent pushing myself, of which I wasn't the smartest with pushing myself in the gym at that point either. So it all brought itself to a head where I landed in the same spot that I did in college. For that would be the 3rd time. This last time, I didn't have that happen. So I managed things much better than I had before, which, pat myself on the back. Good job. I learned my lesson the hard way enough times that I didn't make the same mistakes again. However, what was different this time is that my life right now, I have a lot of people that rely on me, especially within, like you mentioned in my introduction, with Team Gloff. So that's not just a hashtag or something that I call my business. It's really a team, and it really is a bunch of people that give a shit about each other. And so I have a lot of people in that community that I've now built that I'm extremely lucky to have had exactly the people that have fallen into it to this point. I have all of those people that rely on me for me making their life decisions, really. I mean, as a coach, when you take it seriously enough, you're going to be somebody that is directly implanted in somebody's life that's helping them with serious decisions, especially if you're an enhanced bodybuilder. Enhanced bodybuilders put their lives in the hands of their coaches. That's just what it is. And it is that extreme. It's not something to bat around. So, and I had more clients now than I ever had in the past. And so that kind of responsibility and the work that I had to be doing for them, plus financial responsibility on me, where I actually, I'll say this, I don't know if I've said this on the other podcast, but I went into school and doing everything that I've done so I could get successful as quickly as I could, so that I could help my family back home, actually, is really the number one driving force for me. Is I'm just a small town kid with a family that has struggled for as long as I've been alive. And the one thing that I really wanted was to be the kid that made it, so I could help, so I could make sure that my mom never had to work again. Like, that's really what it's always been for me. And with that, I have been helping in the last year or so that I've been able to, because my business is doing pretty well. And then I have other people that are in my life that rely on me financially, and then emotionally, and just everything in every aspect, really. So there's way too many responsibilities on my shoulders from the people that were supporting me the most for doing the prep, where me continuing to go through the rest of the prep that I had needed to get through, which by the time that I had pulled out was still 10 weeks to the first show and 14 to the second. By 20 weeks out, I was already getting pushed too far. I wasn't handling my own prep. I had a coach, but I was already looking at having the next 20 to 24 weeks being extremely difficult to the point that I was barely even functioning in my normal everyday life. And obviously every bodybuilder out there is going to be like, oh, well, it's just what prep is. Like, hold on. Being a 250-pound bodybuilder, having 1,700 calories a day, doing over 70 minutes of cardio structured a day on the stairs, plus an hour and a half on a treadmill a day, just for the steps to add. That's plus the training. That's about 7 hours a day of physical activity right there alone at 20 weeks. And so what was going on with me is I would get done with the cardio in the morning from 20 weeks out all the way up to 10. Oh, can you hear that?
No, I can't.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Just a whole motorcade went by.
Oh, no,
So
you're good, man. It's all good. All good.
Gotcha. So with all that was getting balanced off, I could not manage to continue functioning. So I would get up in the morning, I would do my cardio, and I would come back. And for me to continue living my day, it wasn't just having a hypo episode that would go away, or having like reactive hypotension when you stand up and you don't get the blood to your head as quickly as you like, and it just goes away. It would be anytime I would stand up, I would have to pretty much use a cane. I'd have to hold myself up on every object in the near vicinity so that I didn't hit the deck. And then eventually, by about 17 weeks out, it was every time I went to do cardio or activity, it was that same deal. I had to hold myself up just to get myself to them, struggle my way through them, and then afterwards I'd be a zombie, because there was absolutely nothing left in me, because it was too much, too soon, too consistently, without having any sort of pullback, which is pretty much exactly the same circumstances that my first 2 preps went under, which were the mistakes that I was trying to avoid. But those mistakes weren't ones that were me to change. They were for the person that I trust as coach to change, right? And so it was just a problem that I had to deal with. And by the time I got to 10 weeks out, there was really not very many cards left to pull. And I was already dug in that far. And in that time, I had already had to pull back on my business responsibilities, handling my people the way that they should be, handling the people in my life the way that they should be, controlling all of those, like the normal life things that actually are important. And like I alluded to just a couple of sentences ago, I couldn't, by the time I got to that 10-week out mark, after going through that for 10 weeks, I have another 10, then 14 to get through. I've already started to peel myself away from everybody in the manner that you would when you start feeling like death at 5-6 weeks out, which is normal, because everybody understands you get to 5-6 weeks out. It's like you get a pass. It's like, all right, dude, like you feel like death. We understand. It's cool. You just hunker down and do the bare minimum of what you need to do so you can survive and get to the end of this. You can't start having that at 17 weeks out from the first one and 21 from the second. And then everyone just throws up their hands like, my clients that are dependent on me and I am dependent on them for my income. I can't just go, yeah, well, it's prep, guys. Like, see you in a half a year. Because that was literally it. It was like I had a half a year to go at that point. It's not feasible by then. So I had to make the decision, with everything that was going on in my own personal life, plus my business responsibilities, and everyone that relies on me for what I get out of that. Should I sacrifice all those responsibilities to all of these people, the exact people that support me the most, that I want to do the show to vindicate? Does that make any sense? Like, that's really, like, that's where I got to, is like, does it make any sense for me to make the decision to continue on for the next 10 weeks and then 14 with this show season, despite the fact that all of these people are going to suffer as a result? And they're exactly the people that support me the most. Like, that's just cross wires that you can't uncross. And so I got to that point. I was like, all right, there's really no decision here. I need to pull out and make sure that I actually take care of business, take care of my people, because they're more important than me in their processes, take care of all the people around me in my life that need it, that I've been neglecting up to that point because I had no ability to continue to function my normal way. So I was out of options. It was either continue to stick it out and suck it up, because that's what bodybuilders do, and then just be left with nothing at the end, because my business would have been completely and utterly collapsed by then. Anyone that didn't have multiple year coaching loyalty with me would be gone, and that's not enough to live on. And then my own relationship here probably wouldn't be in the best place, just like most bodybuilders understand. Like, which are, and that's actually something that I can pull, instead of talking mostly about me here, say in a general sense, this is a battle that a lot of bodybuilders have and go through, but most of them choose wrong. The story of, I was just going to do it no matter what, and then you get down to it and then they lose everything. They estrange their family. They lose their relationship, no matter how solid it was. They end up living out of their car or whatever, and having their last dollars just be their entry fees and the food for the last week of the show, and then figuring out their life afterwards, after it's been completely shattered to bits. Like, I'm not doing that. I know for a fact that there are more important things than just that. And I'm not willing to sacrifice everything else that my life is to get on a stage and then potentially, hopefully, get qualified to go to the nationals to make a run at a pro card, which there's no guarantee I'd be able to do. Too high stakes for too little benefit, in my opinion. And so for where I'm at now, after getting enough distance away from that decision making, I am working my hardest to build up my business systems so that I can have everything run smoothly as I possibly can get it to be, so that I can peel myself away from some parts of the process that don't necessarily need to be me, that can be done a little bit better, a little bit smoother, that can be done more uniformly. And then changing some of the ways that I go about my coaching that can make it a little bit easier to manage, even by time that I'm struggling, so that things can just continue to move on smoothly by the time I get there. Because that was definitely a weak spot of mine for this last prep that ended up leaving me in trouble. That doesn't need to happen again. And so that's where I'm at with that. And as of right now, I'm just handling myself, all of my own things, just so that I can keep myself on the straight and narrow and doing what I got to do, figure myself out, and then set up my plans for this following year.
Why don't you tell us, Nick, then about, you mentioned kind of like, building a community earlier with Team Gloff. How is this, has this been something kind of organic, or how do you kind of approach building like a community that's like-minded, building a team in terms of like, the coaching space?
So the way that it actually initially started was when I first started coaching all the way back in the beginning. I was a part of a coaching group back then, before I even had done anything really on my own, aside from posting things on Instagram and going through school and doing the rest, because I started in my last year of college. So at that time, I was working with a coaching group, and one of the things that they did was they had multiple different group chats on different apps that they would be able to communicate with one another in whatever format that they would like to. And they would have weekly calls. And those calls on the weekend were multiple hours long, which was not going to be something that I wanted to emulate, having it be like a 6-hour event. However, they did have weekly calls. And that was something that I really liked about the whole service. And I connected with those two pieces of it and saw that there was a lot of potential in doing that, aside from doing like Facebook groups and all the rest of it, because I didn't want to put anything into like a Facebook group, because I don't know, it just becomes extra for whatever reason. It just becomes something that it wasn't intended to be. So having it on a platform that's a little bit decentralized from that, so it's not as easily intertwined into like all the other internet sources of information. Like going out of Facebook, it easily becomes like meme wars time when you have a chat room. on something like that. And then it pulls in other topics that have absolutely nothing to do with bodybuilding. And it can become divisive because the world we live in right now is quite divisive in a lot of ways. And it just opens the door to too many things that are going to be end up being problematic to the community building effort. And so having every single one of my clients on one group chat in WhatsApp was initially for that purpose, to build the community, but also so that I can give out announcements and do it all at one place. So anything that was going on with me, I could communicate very easily to everyone that was a client of mine all at the same time. And as that continued to grow and the roster grew and people were there for longer and longer times, they just started talking amongst one another, building very tiny groups within each other. Then, to my surprise, a good handful of them ended up pulling together and making their own group chats outside of the original group chat, and then just continually pulling people into those ones, all the separate ones that they created, and then built this like super, super strong, tight knit friend group within the team. And with that, I mean, I can just take note on this last week of what that was for me, is the Team Gloff trip that I just had this last week, which is a biannual event now where I have a bunch of athletes fly in and stay down here with me, and they get an Airbnb, and then they live the bodybuilding life just down here in Stewart, train at Revive, and get to spend a whole lot of time with me. And had a really nice turnout this time. We had a couple bodies missing from the normal crew that had started it from last year. However, it was fantastic. We got a couple new faces as well. And it really is, and I have some videos on my YouTube if people are interested in seeing this. I have a recap video of the first one that is up there now. And then maybe by the time that this one comes out, this podcast comes out, or shortly thereafter, there will be another one, which will be a full recap video of the entire team trip this time. So you can see everything that went on and how everybody is together. But that first one through, you could see on that YouTube video just how tightly knit everyone is. And by the end of it, we all sat down on a couch and just talked and into a camera just to give the recap of the weekend. And everyone that spoke up pretty much said that they've never seen a more cohesive group of people in one place ever, to just walk into the same house and live together for a whole week and be able to coexist in harmony like that and be on the same page, finish each other's sentences, and just be happy the whole time that they're there. Have not a single complaint about any single person or any single happening the whole time. It's like completely unheard of for human beings put in one place. So yeah, I mean, me building that community is partially just because of me, pulling people in. And I think that's a self-selecting process over my coaching, where people that are similar to me are going to find their way in because they like to hear what I have to say, one, and then two, they like the delivery method because I speak in a very specific way. I put that through into text in a very specific way. You can see my values through the way that I go about doing all my social media presence. And so the people that are more likely to engage with that end up being clients of mine. And it's usually the people that attach to it the most become clients of mine. So they self-select in, and they're all pretty similar in that way to begin with. And then once they're actually in the mix and they find a whole lot of other people that are already there that are outspoken enough to make themselves heard, that are the same as well, but they're different enough that they're intriguing to have heard, it builds a community in itself. And I don't have to do a thing. At this point, it's a runaway train that I have barely any control over. It's really the guys that originated the team culture, which is not me. The team culture was built by the guys that really come down to these trips now, the ones that showed up to the team calls every week, every single week for the last multiple years. It's the mainstays of the team that really built that unit that now stand at the core of it. And whenever somebody pops into the team, they're just like, hey, come on in. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you have to say. Let's see what you're like. and we're going to make you feel like you're part of the real team. You're going to be on first string with the rest of us. Yeah.
Love that, man. So, Nick, what for you, what do you want Team Gloff to become? And then what is your goal as a mentor, as a coach, in terms of like more of on the prep side, right? So do you have goals of, having somebody win the Olympia, multiple Olympia winners? Like, what is the Team Gloff goal, like vision long term? And then what is your individual like prep coaching goal in terms of your athletes and future athletes?
My goal is to take it as far as I can possibly get it to go. And as far as I'm concerned, I can bring it all the way to the end and have somebody that's working under me take to the Olympia stage. If I'm not lucky enough to get an Olympia winner by the luck of the draw, I am positive I can get somebody onto the Olympia stage. And now, whether that's in training specific coaching or it's all inclusive is yet to be seen. However, there's a lot of years between now and then. And that's where I'm at right now, is I'm taking it as far as I can and helping my guys as much as I possibly can to do what I can with them. And so that's where my eyes are set right now. At the end goal, it's going to change. Who knows how many times the goalposts are going to change for me between now and then. And so I like to keep the next goal sitting directly in front of my face so I can continually crush those and keep on moving forward. But it's always driving myself towards the highest peak I can get to is where I'm always looking at. And I make the actions on short term. You may or may not have heard that one.
Hey, I heard the dog barking, right?
Yeah. The girlfriend just left, and so she's throwing a tantrum. Yep. Okay.
It's
so
awesome.
yeah, it's real life. Is what it is.
Yeah.
So that's really the end goal. I want to get somebody to the Olympia stage at some point, whether it's through training or it's through full-on coaching. Doesn't really matter to me. I think it can be done in either way. And so that's where I'm looking at. And really maybe you can tell by the expression, the thing that really gets me jazzed up is thinking about the guys that I've had from the very beginning of their careers and bring them as far as they can go, whether or not that's a single show or it's all the way up to the end, getting them up onto the Olympia stage at some point in whatever division that they're in. Doesn't matter to me. I want to see those guys make it as far as I can possibly get them to be. And all the people that have decided to put their faith in me up to this point that want to get to that ultimate end goal, I want to see them through to the end. Because I don't know if it's a thing with me or if it's just a thing that coaches don't typically talk about. We do kind of like attach ourselves onto these these bigger goals that like everyone's got. Like every coach is going to tell you, yep, I want to get athletes on the Olympia stage. It's like, that's the normal canned answer. But I think there's something missing in the responses, especially with the motivations of the coach, if they come out with the answer that they would prefer to do that in any means possible, rather than bring the guys that were already with them for so many years to the ultimate end goal that they could possibly get to, which is really where I want to be, because I get more fulfillment giving that investment into somebody and then having all of that come to fruition at the very end, rather than maybe getting somebody on the Olympia stage to put, a pat on my own back for, I don't know, have a guy for a single prep and he was already on the door of it. He was already going to be there anyway. He was already qualified, or high level nationals. You tweak a couple of things to get him to the pro stage and there you go. Like, that's going to be a lot less fulfilling than it is to have somebody for years that started from the bottom, brought them all the way up through the ranks and just found a way to get them as far as they could go. It doesn't matter if they hit the Olympia stage or not. Is as far as they could possibly take it. And that's what really resonates to me the most. That's what energizes me to think about, rather than get somebody on the Olympia stage one way or in another. Because it's the most prestigious show. It's the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. But these are people that we're working with And it's these people's goals that honestly, like as a coach, there should be no splitting or like hierarchy of goal importance for a coach's mind, whether or not it's the first show they've ever done or it's the Olympia, for the amount of importance that you should be holding that prep in for those people. And I feel the same. That's just the way it is for me. Every single show is the biggest show. It doesn't matter what it really is. And I think that energy that you can give to your clients and the people that are actually dependent on you for the help can feel that energy or the lack thereof when your goal is really to just get people on the Olympia stage. Oh, did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
I lost you.
Oh, okay.
So for where I'm at as a coach, my biggest goal is just to take the guys that I've had, that I've built up, that whether or not they're midway through their journey or from the very beginning, seeing them through for a good long period of time to get them to their final end goal, because that's really what's important to me as a coach, more so than the accolades of getting somebody onto the Olympia stage, because the accolades don't mean much to me. It'll be cool because that's like the peak of competitive bodybuilding and competitive bodybuilding coaching. But I think being able to get somebody there that wouldn't have likely gotten there without your help is so much more fulfilling than finding that genetic freak, the Ferrari that just walks into your door. It's like, here, bring me there. It's like, okay, why don't you go and look at some dumbbells for an hour, literally look at them, and then go eat your food and then blow up. And then there you go, Olympia physique. It's like, not all that fulfilling. There's not much you can do as a coach. It's more so like the adage about S&C coaches, where when you get an S&C coach that's all the way up at like the NBA, the NFL, and all the rest of them, your job isn't so much to create great athletes. It's to make sure that they don't trip over things and get hurt in the gym. I don't want to be that S&C coach in our realm where my job is just don't screw this up, dude. Just don't screw this up. Like, yeah, just don't hurt yourself. Be super careful. Nerf everything. Like, it's not fulfilling. So really, yes, I do want to get people onto the Olympia stage, but I want to do it my way.
Cool. Okay. Now, something that you and Matt Berzicott on your guys' first episode of Going Deep, you kind of touched on it just in passing as you guys were just kind of chit-chatting, and kind of Matt was sharing his story. You were sharing a little bit of your prep story from this year of why you didn't finish it. And it really caught my attention because I am not a prep coach. I don't coach people online, but I own a gym and I train people in person. So this is kind of the perspective I'm coming from. And I've realized that, you know, when somebody steps into the gym and you are spending 60 minutes with them, training them and all that, they're bringing their energy into the gym and into that 60-minute session. They're bringing their baggage. They're bringing their life into your space in your life, right?
Yep.
And you and Matt, I think it was more you kind of, again, you just kind of, you brought it to our listeners' attention, and then you guys kind of moved on in passing because both of you understand all this. But I want to draw this out of you because it's something that I'm learning as an in-person trainer and even as a business owner. And I think this is something for the people that are watching, listening to this. It's going to be a great lesson learned, and it's going to be kind of eye-opening. So I want you to dive a little bit deeper, Nick, into when you take on a new client, whether that's online or you're training them in person. Talk about the emotional investment that goes into taking on a client and prepping them and doing all of that, and how their energy and all of their baggage and all of their life, you're basically ingesting that. And I know what I know you know what I'm talking about. Maybe some of the people watching and listening may not understand. That's why I want you to break it down in your terms and from your experience. And what does that look like? What does that mean?
So the biggest thing to always recognize when you're in that position is you're in a position of power. There is a power dynamic there, and it's necessary because you're the person that's leading them. You need to be the person that is leading the charge. You've got the machete in hand, knocking out all the brush. You're the person that they're relying on to bring you to that next step, and every single next step along the way. And every single next step, we have to realize that we're not dealing with people that have, they're not the NBA athletes, they're not the NFL athletes that have everything in their life has been put aside so that they can do this one thing. In bodybuilding, we really don't have that, aside from like a very small few exceptions, very vanishingly small, especially as time goes on and the financial backing of athletes changes in nature over time. Back in the day, that was more likely the case. So you would get the big supplement contracts, you'd be living on a couple $100,000 a year just from doing that, and then winnings and all the rest of it. We don't have that now. It's, you still have that for some, but even those contracts are smaller. You're more reliant on your own independent revenue streams. So like those things are different. And knowing that from the beginning, and people that know that now, especially getting into bodybuilding in this current age, people aren't going into it with, this is the only thing. They have a full-time job, maybe a full-time job and a side hustle or two, and they've got their own family issues, and they're dealing with personal relationship stuff, and they've got everything that a normal human does, plus bodybuilding. And when you take on a client as a coach, you are literally taking what their life can look like in the future, from the time that they start to the time that they end with you, or from the time they start and every single time point in between as they go through their journey. It's really your decision making that guides where they land. And you got to look at it that way. It's not just, I'm doing this decision to change what your body fat levels are going to be at 6 months from now, or how much muscle tissue you're going to have from this time to that time. It's like, it's not just that. It's not coaching a process towards a goal that you can just write down on a piece of paper with a single sentence. It's really dealing with people, not the process. It's dealing with people to guide them through the process, to get them as close to that final end that they're trying to get to within their minds, and what our collective vision is between coach and client to finally make it there. And for absolutely everyone that has any type of a goal, especially any sort of a bigger goal in their life, there's going to be a lot of things that could derail you. And there's a lot of distractions, and there's a lot of real things that at certain times are going to have to take your attention and precedence so that you can have a normal life outside of just doing the thing that we like to do. Because at the end of the day, for the majority of people, you take it all the way to the end of your competitive career, and the majority don't get to stand on the Olympia stage. The goal is always to get the person as far as they can go, but for the majority of people, as a coach, you have to deal in numbers. You have to realize that you're not going to be able to treat all of them as if they're there. It's not like this is the only thing that should matter to you. Why didn't you get that meal in on this day, this one meal that you missed throughout the entire week? It's like, oh, well, I was in a business meeting that was a little bit went over, and it was a big deal, and I kind of couldn't step away from that. It's like, well, there's some coaches, and I know for a fact that some coaches would be like, well, I guess you don't take bodybuilding seriously enough. Or maybe they had to miss a training session because they had a fight with their spouse and they had to deal with it because that's real. Or something even more catastrophic happens. They have a death in the family. It's like, and they're not going to pull the old Arnold thing. It's like, yeah, well, my dad died and I went to the gym on the same day as his funeral. It's like, that's not the way that you should be living your life as a human being that bodybuilds. Because we're human beings that do bodybuilding, not bodybuilders with exclusion to everything else. So keeping that thought process in mind, at least keeps you grounded enough to understand that, okay, these people are going to live through their normal life plus this, living through their normal life plus this, and they're putting all of their faith into you to make the decisions that will guide them there within both of your best abilities to follow it. That's a lot that you need to handle. And along the way, you need to be able to hear them for where they are and what's actually going on, because what they're actually able to do within bodybuilding is going to be directly related to how the rest of their life is functioning. If there's no wherewithal about like all of the other things that could be happening with them, and you just keep on going with the process as it would be without having any sort of respect to what's happening, you're relying on somebody to have that completely exclusionary mindset and then eventually pushing themselves towards self-destruction because of it. Which, again, you come back to the initial line of this, you're taking people's lives into your hands, and what their life will look like in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now is going to be directly related to the way that you handle them. So you're the coach and you could just completely skirt responsibility for it. Be like, well, what happens in your personal life is all you, dude. It's like, which is true. But at the same time, if you're over reliant on, especially the people that are going to be more type A, very super goal oriented, really organized, and you just lean them hard right into this is the thing that matters because of the way that you project your value system onto them for what you would like to see them as clients. Because it makes it easier if you treat athletes like they're machines. Like you just give them the input data and you expect reliable output data, and you just continue to do that to get to the desired end goal. You treat them like that, it makes it really easy on the coach for sure. But at certain times, the person that is that input output machine is having a whole hell of a lot more inputs that you're not expecting, that you're not open to hearing, and then taking into calculation for the expected outputs that come out of it. And that ends up being a frustrating thing for the coach because they're not understanding what's going on, or they're just not well equipped enough to handle people's personal issues enough so that they can actually level with them, or even just have basic human empathy, which is something I see in a fair few amount of coaches. Just a basic lack of human empathy that leaves you with just this super mechanical way of doing things with everyone. It's a repeatable process. It's coaching the process. And that's what we even see all the memes about. It's like, enjoy the process. Like everything's about the process. Like it's not about the person achieving it. It's not about the person putting in the effort to get there. It's like, it's a completely exclusionary mindset, which as a coach or a in-person PT, you can't put what you want out of them in a place where it's completely out of reach for them by normal means with what they can actually do. Your calculations as a coach and as a PT needs to be looking at, okay, what can you actually feasibly do given all of this? You may need to change some things so you can handle the rest of this better, of which we still stand as a liaison to help guide them and figure, okay, well, here's my experience and here's other people's normal experience with having bodybuilding as something that we care about, and then all these other things that we still need to juggle. You may have to change your approaches to this, and this, the way you think about this, and this, and then just adjust everything so that you can live and coexist within the bodybuilding sphere, doing what you want to do and actually getting what you want out of it while handling the rest of your life. But it's all getting put into account so that the actual bodybuilding part of it is also tailored to what the person can do, which is a huge missing piece that a lot of coaches and PTs just don't have. Because they get in there and they turn off the human empathy. They're just like, this is the job. This is it. This is bodybuilding. If you're not about it, don't be about it. Get out of here. It's like, okay, well, these are people that are coming to you because they want to and they care. Don't push your all or nothing, where all is literally taking all of what they have from everything else and then taking it away to put it into this one thing because that's what you would want to do. That's an unfair expectation. And in my personal view, that is one of the biggest things that is a problem with bodybuilding coaching. So we almost pull it from the roots of the big sports. It's like we'd imagine what the best coaches in the world would do in the biggest sports. And yeah, you have people that literally have nothing else. So what do? You treat them like a process. It's the same machinations for everybody. You just push them through, you grind them through, and that's it. You don't have that here. And you can't treat it like that, or else you end up being a shitty coach.
So do you have a little bit more time, Nick, or do we need to kind of start wrapping things up?
I have a little bit more time.
Okay. So I guess I want just to pull out from you or follow up with what you just shared. How do you as a coach, or how do I as a trainer, how do we protect ourselves when we are intaking so much of everybody else's energy and baggage and their lives? Like, because I think that's a little bit of what you were talking about earlier on this podcast, on your guys' podcast with Matt, about just you've got to the point in your preps where there's so much stress, there's so much going on. And specifically this last one for you, you have so many, irons in the fire. It's just, I think it can be overwhelming. And I found myself in that position, as well, owning a business and trying to do prep and training people, this and that. So how can we protect ourselves so that we, in a year or two aren't completely wiped out, burned out, and trying to figure out, where we're going, we have nothing left.
Yeah. That's something that I'm trying to figure out perfectly myself. So I'll give you what I can on it at the very least. So I know for myself, part of the problem with trying to manage all of that is not having everything within the business ran in a way that I could detach myself from a lot of the pieces of it that didn't necessarily have to be me. Like I referred to when we were first getting started with this, with the introductions, it's a problem if you have to be attached to every piece of the process, and it's more time consuming than it necessarily has to be, because it's not ironed out and fine tuned to the degree that it can almost be automated. Even if it's not fully automated, having all of it like put together in a way that it just does most of the time consuming work for you, and it's intuitive enough that it's very easy to manage by the time that you do need to push it through and get everything done that's needed to be done. And then having revenue streams that aren't solely dependent on the hours of work that you put in, as non-feasible as that is for a lot of people. Honestly, that's a big part of it. And as coaches or in-person PTs, there are some things that you could do to offer those types of services where you put in a large time commitment, creative thinking commitment, and product creation commitment that'll give you the opportunity to put all that down and then have that given out to more and more people, where it's not direct time investment for every single interaction you have from that point. And so those are some things that I'm going to be working on myself, which I'm currently working on, to have more deliverable things that can work as another separate revenue stream, so that you're not feeling like and not even just feeling, but you're not solely tied to the revenue that you get from just the clients themselves. Because that dynamic there, although a necessary one, can make things really difficult for you to keep up your boundaries, which is exactly the problem. That's how you keep your sanity, is having boundaries that you don't compromise on. That's the thing. So I talked about on the podcast, like the way that the coaching structures and the way that they've changed. And I don't know if it was on the first one or the second one that's about to come out this following Monday. I can't remember. I was sitting in that chair talking about it, I remember. But one of the things about coaching is that since we're all on a free advertising platform, everyone has the ability to go do it. And with that, it's become a rat race and a chase to have the next thing or the higher sell with your services, so that people are that are window shopping it are going to look at what you do and be like, oh, I get more with this person than this person, and this is their price versus their price. And looks like that's the better value. So there we go. Like it's turned into really a rat race that is honestly like not productive for anybody, because it draws even the people that have the moral and value system to just do everything that they need to for their people and not have to go and give the 15 things that are on the flyer just because, not even because it's actually helpful to the service, just because it's another thing that you could put there with the bullet point. Like, it ends up creating a dynamic for you that's almost untenable, because you also feel like if you're always being window shopped, then you need to over deliver to the nth degree, to the point that they could never even think about the possibility of leaving, because they just get so much for such a value that it just wouldn't make sense. And as much as most coaches may not want to admit that goes through their mind, it does. And as a in-person PT, it's probably the same thing. We're thinking about like, well, what's my edge over this next person that's in the gym at the same time as me that's doing this training? Are they looking over at what they're doing and seeing that maybe they have a little tip or a trick or something that I don't have? Or are they adding another part to their service that isn't just on the gym floor that maybe I could do, and it's still out of your means because you just can't figure a way to add that in? And like, so there's always this, which is partially a good pressure to keep you elevating, but it comes to a point, and that point doesn't have an end in the current culture. And so the boundaries that we set end up being very flimsy a lot of the time, because we're trying to find that next upsell, because it's a direct evaluation of what we're able to provide and what our service is worth by having that next upsell. But that upsell, when you don't have a deliverable of some kind or a solid system that works for you, you have to either build that system from scratch. And most of the time, when it's built out of necessity, it's not built as smoothly for operation as it would be if it was further thought out for another reason, which is something that I'm finding, because a lot of my business is, it runs not the smoothest because I just did it in an organized fashion that worked for me, that made sense to me, but it pulls in a whole lot more time investment overall from everybody. And then with the specifics of the way that I run my coaching, there's just added elements to it that add another personal touch that can be just a runaway train for time spent. And then because I am open with people and I want to be able to help them with things that they're handling, because I don't just coach the process, I coach the person, that's a hard line in the sand to draw, where there's some things that you would just think that people won't tell you, that you won't have to deal with. But some people just don't have that filter, or they feel comfortable enough to share it with you. And in either case, what it is what it is, and you have to deal with it once it's in your lap. The key to that is just not to have it fall in your lap in the first place, if it's something that is actually unnecessary for you to know. If it's really something that you do need to know, that they do need help with, and they're reaching out to you, it's still your job to take care of it. At the very least, it's your job to hear them out, because most people just need that. They just need to be heard. That's what they want. Most people, some people just want to complain, but most people don't. They're trying to get out something that they don't have another opportunity to, and they don't have a safe person to tell it to. Not everybody has a therapist. Not everybody has people that directly surround them in their lives that are always going to be receptive to what they have to say. And if you're an impartial person that is there with the role of supporting them, it's a natural thing that they're going to turn to you at some point, if you actually approach them with enough humanity and enough humility to be able to accept and take on what they have to tell you. It may just be the case that you end up handling that. And if it does come to that, so be it. But then there's the separation between those things that they actually need and the people that are actually in that tough spot that require that. And then the people that will just have a problem, and then every problem becomes yours. There is a fine line between those two. There's people that genuinely need help, and that it is incumbent on you to help them because they're turning to you because they really need it. And then there's the people that just find a problem out of anything, that will turn all of their problems into your problem. And to get around the problem of having those people on that side of things overrun your time spent on your business, that takes away from your own mental health and your ability to handle everyone properly, or to scale your business further, or continue to go and engage in all the other parts of your practice that you need to be paying attention to, or paying attention to other things in your own life to be able to spend that time doing that problem juggling for people that just don't have problem solving skills within themselves. That becomes hard. It becomes extremely hard. And those are boundaries that are hard to know exactly how to set up. And I'm in that position right now, trying to figure my way through just trying to find that perfect balance. You always want to have, and I talk because I want to make sure that I say that I don't have the answer. I just have where I've gone and where I am right now. And I find it difficult to have both the open door for anyone that needs it and have it express that I'm here to help, but also be able to keep the boundary solid enough that it doesn't become you're just the problem receptacle now. So to find where that is, it's what I'm seeing is a problem for myself, is that I rely on the clients themselves for that, where I would hope that the people that are actually there are going to decide that not every problem is my problem, and they'll keep those to themselves to problem solve on their own, rather than it all just falling into me, which is in itself a problem, because there should be a more solid barrier there that would disallow that from happening or being entertained through the people that don't have that wherewithal to understand the fact that they are doing that. They have no remorse for it. They're just doing it because there's people that are like that. They just don't understand the impact that what they're doing is having. And once they have a place to push their problems to, they do. We all know people like that. So it becomes difficult to manage those boundaries and barriers that you have in place. And I don't really have a solid answer, but I know for a fact that something that does help is not being only and solely tied to the money that you get from your clients only, because that dynamic of need ends up becoming one way at that point. And so you never feel as though, okay, so you're actually taking on everything in good faith. If they're coming to you with a problem and you accept helping them, that's you helping them because you want to, rather than, oh crap, there's another one, and now I got to deal with this so I can make sure I can pay my rent next month. That's not a place that you should be, especially if you're actually trying to coach people. It's not helpful. Ends up it pulls away all your boundaries the quickest. Having a financial incentive not to have them is the quickest way to lose them.
Awesome, man. Okay. Can I ask you a question pertaining to PEDs, or would you rather not discuss that right now?
Sure, you can ask.
Okay, so this will be kind of the last serious question, and then I've got a couple fun ones to kind of close this out, and then I'll let you go. The question I want to ask, Nick, is, you started taking PEDs at a fairly young age. Is that something that you wish that you wouldn't have? And how do you kind of approach people that ask you that question? Like, hey, I'm 18, I'm 17. Should I start taking PEDs? How do you navigate those questions? How do you look back on your life? And do you have any regrets of how young you started PED use?
That's a good question. So for me personally, I would say that it was the right decision for me at the time, even with all the problems that it did give me over the times that I did start using them and in the first years. However, I think, in my own personal development and actually helped me in a way. So it gave me the next step into the thing that I cared the most about. And it gave me another depth to my character where I really had to contend with, for the first time in my life, with the very real danger of having my life be lost or my health forever be lost because of decisions that I make badly. Having that as a thought on your mind, because it necessarily has to be there, is an accelerator for how conscientious you can be. And so in some ways, it really helped me to take a better understanding of the risks that are involved, and then how to manage all the unspoken things that come from going down this road, especially early. So I didn't have a full life established. I was just making things happen as they went. And I went in the path that brought me to the place that I am now, which I can't really say that I regret. So for me, do I regret it? No, I don't. I have some health issues that came up that were probably made worse by them, for sure. However, all in all, I'm pretty healthy. I really don't have any issues to speak of that are going to be long standing in any way, shape, or form beyond what most dudes that do bodybuilding end up having just through their competitive years. So nothing really to go back on for that decision on that. And it's brought me to the place that I am now, which I could not have done without, honestly. So it was a huge part of being able to get the development out of myself that I was doing with all the work I was already going to be doing in the first place. So it helped me. But that's all I'll say on that, me personally. But with people that are your question, and this is the important part of the question, what people that are 17, 18, 19, 20 coming to me to ask, should I start? Like, hell no. Hell no. Don't. You don't want to do that too early. It worked out for me, but don't make a one in, I don't even know how many statistically that make it through this and get to a better place as a result. There's some more prominent people that could tell this story that do a similar thing to me, that started early. They already had their mind set on where they were going to go. They just drove right through all the bullshit to get there. And then they are where they are sitting today, from where they can speak on it to where they can say that it was a positive experience. There are way more people that it does not go that way. And they start and it causes problems for them, whether or not it's health related or it's just personal issues or anything possible, causes some sort of a problem for them, or they go through their own personal problems that have nothing to do with it. And then it just becomes an added complication. And then what happens if bodybuilding in your early years is something that you care about, and then a couple of years later you don't? And now you've made the decision, where we all know that you make the decision to start using PEDs. It's okay, well, this isn't something you can take lightly. This is, once you start, the likelihood that you will need support hormonally for the rest of your life is quite high. So high that you have to kind of accept, when you take your first shot of whatever it is that you're going to do, you're going to be on for life. That is a heavy decision to make for one moment to start things. And if you haven't gotten to the point of starting it yet, delay that as long as you possibly can, especially with being so young, being 17, 18, 19 is what I tend to see now, especially as I'm getting a little bit older. I mean, I'm 24, almost 25, so I'm not that old, but I feel like I'm old in the way that I'm seeing everything through social media, because timelines on social media age is like so ridiculously compressed. It's like you see a decade of change in like the social structures within a year of time. which is insane. So looking back on the way that things go and watching people as they go through the journey, through the times that they do, lots and lots and lots of people are drawn directly into the gym. And then after that, into bodybuilding in their really young years. And they attach to it because it's the next physical endeavor that they can get into. Probably were in sports prior and they really enjoyed them and they got a lot out of them. And then they just walked into the next sport that they could do feasibly because they're not some sort of super athlete. And so they attach themselves into this thing and then they go super gung ho into it. And now they have social support all around them throughout Instagram and now TikTok and YouTube and all the rest of it. And it gives this sense of hope that, oh, anyone can make it. It's like anyone can make it, but not everyone can make it, is the thing that people don't get. So especially now seeing these 16, 17 to 20-year-olds having a whole crew of guys with their $7,000 camera and just filming each other while they're literally standing powwowing around a bench for 3 hours, doing nothing but pounding on their chests with anything below 225, because none of them are strong enough for that anyway. Like, and completely like as heavy as a wet dog. Like that, it's not those guys that are going to make it, but they still try. And if you want to give yourself the nice picture to think of, are you falling in that category or not? If you are, you have a lot more personal work to do first, and then to figure out whether you actually care about it or not. Because this is a thing that you will do by yourself. By yourself. The gym time, maybe you'll share with somebody else. But everything that makes you a bodybuilder and makes you successful at it, you are going to do with no one else telling you got to do it all of the time, every day, from the day that you decide to start it until it's over. You're the one that has to prepare your meals and get them in. You're the person that has to go and do the physical activity and the cardio and get that in. You're the one that has to coordinate everything in your life to allow this to be held in the place where your schedule actually fits. So you can do this. You can continue to get better. You have to be able to care about how you structure your training so it's actually individualized to you enough you get where you're supposed to be going. You have to care enough and put yourself to bed at night and get your water in and make sure that you're salting your meals and like all the little details. That's you, the individual, that has to decide to do that. It's not the team that stands around you that's going to get you to do that. But that's the missing piece, I think, with these really young guys that want to get into it, because they still have that little bit of an attachment to like what that team camaraderie is like. And they have that with even maybe the group of people that they have now decided to all go into bodybuilding together with. Give it another year, give it another 2 years. A lot of those guys are going to drop off. They're not going to really care about bodybuilding anymore. It was just a nice thing to go and do with the boys, to go and train and just have a good time. And now maybe what they're doing is they're going to the same gym, but they're playing on the basketball court. Still doing something, but it's not bodybuilding, and maybe you're the only one left. Did you decide that you were going to take PEDs back then, and then you realized that it was really about the camaraderie aspect and having a team around you that made you want to do it and take it that far? It's a realization that you probably won't make until you get to that point where it backfires. I would think about it this way, if I can encapsulate it. Like people say that when you want to get a tattoo, you choose what you want and then you sit on it for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then maybe you look back and go like, all right, well, I still really want it. 3 to 5 years down the line, you're like, all right, well, that's reasonable enough. I'll get it because that'll be on my body from now until I die. It's like, well, you should probably think about taking PEDs in a similar way. It's like, okay, well, this is something I want to do. I have a lot that I could still do between now and then before I start using. So why don't I just go and do that and make sure that I live bodybuilding for a good long time and make sure that I do actually love it within all of the circumstances that life is going to throw at me that could pull me off the path. If you go a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4, and you look back and you're like, huh, I really do love it. I'm doing this all by myself. There's nobody around me anymore. I don't have the powwow of the dudes around the bench press. I don't have a raving fan base on YouTube that is just pushing forward. Like, you're just doing it on your own. Like, do you still care? Do you still want to do it for your own personal reasons? Yes. There you go. Then you make the cost to benefit ratio of what that decision is going to give you versus take away. And then you make the decision for yourself at that point. But if it's been that amount of time that it's been a choice that you've wanted to make, you'll actually have some perspective on what it may or may not mean to you by the time you make it, instead of just send yourself into the deep end and then figure it out from there. There's way too many people that end up making that decision and unluckily don't end up like me, where you go from high school where you knew that you wanted to do this, you go into college knowing that you wanted to do this, you continue doing it all the way through, you make it right out, and then you start coaching immediately and start getting fairly successful off of the gate. And then 2 years later to where I am now is in a quite good place as a coach and as an athlete, to where I can speak on a podcast like this and actually be invited to talk on something like this because I matter enough that I'm invited. So not a lot of people end up there. So even if you can go, and I'm talking through the camera, not to you, but to the people that are listening to this that may be falling in that age range, if this is a decision that you're making and you're going and you're finding people on podcasts like this to validate your decision, you'll find them. You're guaranteed to find them. You're going to find many more people than me that will say, go ahead, do it. I don't see a problem with it. That's when I started. Cool. Yeah, go for it. It did well for me. And it could be on maybe the majority of bodybuilding podcasts that you go on to, that you listen through, that you'll hear that. But then you got to think about the statistics here. Of all of the people that do bodybuilding, how many of their faces appear on a podcast? Vanishingly low percentage. So that's got to be something that has to be kept in mind. It's just a self-selection process. So don't make your decision based off of what other people are telling you. You got to wait and wait, especially with bodybuilding, where we have so much progress that can be made without them, especially in your younger years. So it's like, it's a catch-22 here. It's like, okay, well, you can decide to go on PEDs and then continue to rapidly go through all of those years that you have the progress to be made. You're trying to get ahead of it and get it early, so you go in early with them. But at the same time, between 16 and 22 are going to be the most wild times for you to put on tissue and get strong in your whole life. So in that period of time where people are making this early decision, do you really need to? No. You're just developing everything that would be the base of what will be added to when the PEDs go in at a later point. And you're already getting so much support by your body doing what it's supposed to be doing. You're going to have the steroid-like gains just by being you and taking care of your health in those years. So you might as well. And then after that point, you make the decision. But again, that's giving you all that time where you are actually maximizing what you could get, learning how to love bodybuilding and whether or not you do. And then you look back on the decision once all of that like great gains between 17 to 22 starts to peel its way back. Then you can make the decision, and you've gotten the time and you've seen what it's like. You've gone through the grind. Now it's time. I'll leave it at that, or else I'll talk forever.
Yeah, man, you know what? We could literally, I've got so many more questions. I got so much more stuff I want to touch on, but you've got a lot going on. I've got a lot going on. So a couple of quick fun things, and then I'll let you go. So this will be our quick hitter. Give me your top 2 gym pet peeves, Nick.
I think I already said one. It's the group of 6 plus broccoli heads with a $7,000 Canon camera filming the 135-pound bench press without a shirt on. Like, that encapsulates it, honestly, because it's so ubiquitous now. It's insane to me. You can go in any gym and it's just, for some reason, how all these kids have the money for a camera, like a professional camera, I don't understand. But they do, apparently. And then they come in with a whole group and then it's just filming each other for YouTube. It's like, guys, that's a pet peeve for me, because it's like, it's almost like a bastardization of what that actually is to a great degree. It's like, okay, you're trying to make it cool, but do you have something of value to present? Or are you just doing the same cringy TikTok type thing where you're just doing a double on 135 for the bench press and then tinting the color down with the contrast as much as you can, putting beast mode over it with a voiceover, and then just getting up and like doing a crab pose directly after your set? It's like, okay, like, great. Did you get 1 million views on that? Good for you. Nobody knows your name. So there you go.
That's awesome. That's like 10 of them wrapped up in one. We'll leave it right there. That's perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Last kind of fun one. I'm kind of curious. Who do you got as like maybe like a dark horse for the Olympia, or somebody that you think is really gonna, get cracking that top 5, we'll say, that hasn't been there before? Anybody off the top of your mind?
This year, I honestly
This year.
don't even believe that we're going to have too many new faces that are going to make it into that top 5. So I'm thinking that we're going to have a pretty consistent lineup from 1 to 5. I think after that is going to be a big shuffle.
Let me throw this name in there. Derek Lunsford. What do you think about him? Do you think he has a shot at the top 5 or not?
I think he potentially could, but I don't know if he's going to be able to do that right now. As good as he is, and I give him credit, I've seen him in person. He's impressive, extremely. And he has a fantastic structure, as we've all seen. But it's going to be one dependent on whether or not it all lands properly, because that's been a limited run of those that have landed properly for him when it's really mattered the most, which he would himself admit. But then further than that, just knowing that the Olympia is a bit of a political stage, you have to be so ridiculously above everyone else to get pushed up if you haven't been there. And so since he's been 212, he's got some cred, but at the same time, going into open, it's like, this is a new group. You got to work your way up from the back, is kind of the way that things run, even because we've seen this so many times with so many athletes that were like, clearly he's better than them, but they get dropped back behind them because it's their first or their second time, and comparative to the other ones that have been there 5, 6, whatever times, like, you haven't paid your dues yet. So I don't think it's a merit thing. I think Derek could definitely be in the mix of top 5 by his merits, but by the political nature of the Olympia stage, I don't believe so. I think he'll be put maybe 7th or 8th is where I would place him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Really quickly, with Hunter Labrada and Nick Walker, do you see either of those guys getting into the top 3 this year at the Olympia?
Yes.
Okay. Which one, or both of them?
I see Nick will definitely be there. I'm pretty confident that he'll be able to land that. And then Hunter, depending on what he's looking like, because he's made a lot of change this year. So as a dark horse would go, to your question, he would be a dark horse, but we've seen him so many times too that I wouldn't exactly like register him as a dark horse. He's just going to be a big improvement. So whether or not he's going to beat Nick, I don't know. My own bias would say no, not anything against Hunter, but Nick is just a freak of freaks. He looks like a cartoon character. So I'm thinking that with the size game, I think he's going to take him just a bit. And I don't think that the structure benefit that Hunter has is going to shine through enough that it'll outplay the rest of the mass game, is where I stand with it. So I think Nick will still stand in front, so long as both of them are in pretty much exactly the same condition. I think Nick will still win.
Cool. All right, man. We'll leave it right there. There's a lot more. We'll hopefully get you on again in the future, Nick. Really quickly, before I let you go, why don't you give us your Instagram? Anything else that you want to leave with us? Any shout outs, anything? Platform's yours, man.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I appreciate it. My Instagram is Nick Gloff. It's just my name. So, and everyone misspells my last name. So it's NickGloff. There you go. And then I have teamgloff.com, which is my main website. And then I have my YouTube, which is just under Nick Gloff. Same thing. Find it easy. Then you can go and find the Going Deeper podcast with myself and Matt Berzicott. And that is on Going Deep podcast on YouTube. Obviously, it's brand new, so we don't have very good hits on it yet. So you're probably going to have to scroll a little bit to find where it's at. However, that's pretty much all my things at the moment. New projects are coming down the pipeline, so just keep your eyes out on all of my platforms and you'll be seeing them as they come.
Cool. All right, Nick, appreciate your time. I'm going to do a quick outro, then I'll let you go, okay?
All right, go ahead.
Cool. All of you who are tuning into this episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. Quickly here, as we wrap up this great chat today with Nick, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And then also, please take this episode with Nick, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Nick, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then, per the usual, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.